The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Frosty Walker, Chief Information Security Officer for Texas Education Agency, and welcome to another edition of Cybersecurity Tips and Tools. Today, we're going to be talking about basic incident response. This is the third in our fall series regarding cybersecurity. We'll have three more for the spring semester. We hope you find this information informative. We will allow time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. Should you have questions during the presentation, feel free to submit them and they'll get queued up for the question and answer session. If someone would drop me a note regarding the visual, if it's okay, as well as the audio, I would appreciate that, please. Looks like everything's working well today. Good. Thank you all very much. I want to talk a little bit about the Data Security Advisory Committee that we have providing guidance for Texas education, maximizing collaboration and communication regarding information security issues and resources which can be utilized within the educational communities. The DSAC is currently comprised of representatives from school districts, ESCs, TEA, and the private sector. The DSAC is both diverse in size and geographically across the state of Texas, of folks that are willing to share ideas, time, hopefully to provide solutions for everyday cybersecurity issues we see within the educational community. We've now opened this committee up to anyone that would like to participate. We meet once a month. We schedule that for an hour. Most of the time, it's not a full hour. But it's just talking about what y'all are encountering in the educational field in your arenas today. So anyone that would like to participate on that can drop me a note and we'll add you to that list. And I want to thank everyone who participates on that and helps us with this endeavor. A recording of today's webinar, along with all the other webinars and the presentations that we have made, along with other resources that we have determined to be potentially useful for the educational community, has been posted out on Texas Gateway at https://www.texasgateway.org under Cybersecurity Tips and Tools. If you browse to that location, you will see what the front page of the Texas Gateway looks like. And under Featured Resources, you will see Cybersecurity Tips and Tools. If you click on that, you will see our latest presentations and as well as the videos. So in talking about basic incident response today, let's talk a little bit about life cycle. The life cycle of a cybersecurity incident. And it starts off with the discovery. And discovery can be in a lot of different ways. We can have users contact us and say, hey, my computer's acting funny. I don't know what's going on, but it's just things aren't working right. Or we could get an alert from a potential intrusion prevention or detection system that alerts us of an issue. We could have a third party notify us that there has been a potential compromise or a breach on their system, that there's one of our partners. Or you could potentially have law enforcement such as the FBI come knock on your door and say, hey, we found a bunch of data that appears to be yours while we were investigating another case. So discovery can occur in lots of different manners. It just depends. Every incident's a little different is how they're discovered. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you discover that is you're going to want to assemble an incident response team. And again, that could be led by your third-party vendor who has done this. You say, well, I don't have an incident response team. Well, we'll talk more about that later. You're going to do an internal notification. So who are you going to notify? And in what order are you going to notify those folks? You're going to investigate and you're going to remediate. Again, that could be done internally, or it may be done by a third party. You may have to contact authorities on a need-to-know basis, or law enforcement. You may need to bring in a vendor so that can perform forensics, or even a data breach resolution law or PR firm. In many cases where if you have cybersecurity insurance, your policy may require that you bring in a data breach resolution attorney to oversee. And we'll talk more a little bit about those roles as well. But you need to understand what your policy requires you to do in case you need that. You're going to begin the notification process. So you're going to have to try to figure out who is involved in this compromise, and you're going to procure protection services for those affected. And the notification, determining who needs to be notified, sometimes is very clear and sometimes it's not. We recently had a large firm that Adobe Creative Cloud announced they had a breach, and we had some schools that reached out to us in regard to this breach, and they were saying, well, it looks like we may have or we may not. We're not sure. I said, well, because email addresses were exposed. Depends on if you have a student's first name and last name is part of their email, then their name and email would have been exposed. Under FERPA, those elements can be included as directory information if the school has designated that. So if the school has designated those as information, directory information components, then that is not sensitive information, unless a parent has opted out of that and doesn't want that shared. In that case, if a parent has opted out of that, then they should be notified that there's been a potential exposure of that information. So sometimes that notification process and determining who we're going to be notifying is very difficult. We're also going to make a public announcement with a single point of contact. And again, making a public announcement, you're going to want, you want your legal teams involved. You're going to want, if you have a public relations team or a communications team, you want them involved. Writing those communications is very critical, and we'll talk more about that as well. And you want a single point of contact, and then you're going to respond to those inquiries, and as quickly as possible, you're going to want to resume business as usual. I'm often asked, how long is that period of time? From the beginning, from discovery until you're back in business as normal. That can be a couple of days. That could be weeks. It just varies, and every incident can be different. So let's talk a little bit about rule number 1 in incident response. Have a plan. Yes, you need a plan. So you may have a plan. You may have an incident response policy already established. You may have an incident response team that's been identified. If you do, that's great. If you don't, I recommend where you can find one. The Texas Department of Information Resources has put together a very good incident response team red book. It is out under our Texas Gateway, under resources, and under cybersecurity tips and tools. I believe we posted that in PDF format, but it's actually designed to be a template so you can convert that to Word and change, and modify that to include your organization, and then you can convert it back to PDF. I have this. We use this all the time. I also update that every 6 months in case we've had someone that's left the organization or something changes. The latest version of the Incident Response Team Red Book is dated April 2019. So what all is included in that book? Well, of course, there's a glossary. Talks about acronyms. There is an example of an incident response policy should you not have one. There's an example of one that could be quickly modified for your organization. Section 3 has that is your privacy and security event initial triage checklist on page 12. This is where I actually, every time we open up an incident, this is where we go and start making our documentation. We start going right down the list to see what we need to do. So this is a very good guideline of what you need to be working on. There's also a section about breach notification and post-incident checklists, what you need to do, lessons learned. There are also templates out here that include your contact information, your incident response team's charter, if you need a charter, membership, their roles, templates on meeting minutes, action list, as well as there is Texas government contact information. We'll talk more about what schools, local government can also go vary quite a bit with that. So we'll cover more of those things in detail. There are additional templates out there regarding identity theft protection, where you can find that information. Your internal management alert, a template on what you might need to include for your internal alert. We'll talk more about communications here shortly. Notice to individuals. There's an example in there of the public, the media notice that you have, as well as postmortem and an improvement plan. There's contacts, federal contracts, tax, state contracts. And most people say, well, I don't know why I need federal contacts, but should we have an exposure that involves a Social Security number, the Social Security Administration requires that we notify them, and that information on how you can contact the federal the SSA administration, that information's in there. There's also legal references about Texas laws and federal laws and the regulations around data privacy and security. So those are always good references to have. We talked about that the privacy and security triage checklist, and I've highlighted a couple of things here. We'll go more into depth, but I want to cover all of these things. You're going to assemble your incident response team. So you are going to need to have those roles defined before an incident happens, hopefully. Again, number one rule, have a plan. How often that team is in meetings, it will vary. When it first starts up, those, we typically have those go on for an hour or so. Then we'll adjourn. We'll go out and do work. We'll come back and meet maybe 4 hours later, get an update on that. Maybe the next day we only meet once or twice during the day. So it kind of varies on every incident as to how that might happen. Number 2 on the list is going to be secure your data and your confidential information. Try to limit immediate consequences of the event. You want to suspend access. You may want to shut down an application. It involves an application. You may have to disable the system. You can even contact internet search engines for appropriately to clear internet cache so that's no longer available. You're going to determine your data elements. What type of data? Who owns that data? And the amounts of confidential information that was potentially compromised. You're also going to try to find the source. Unfortunately, in many cases, we may see that same type of information that we know has been exposed in multiple locations. Sometimes we have names, IDs, different types of information in the same databases that are replicated across multiple locations. So, sometimes you have to look at where all of that data may be and then narrow it down from there. You want to scope and escalation. You're going to confirm the level and degree of unauthorized use and disclosure, and identify the or unidentified individuals or threats. The number of individuals impacted. As quickly as possible, you want to try to put that, you identify them, you want to put a number so that you know the impact that this breach or disclosure may have. So the number may impact your notifications, individual, or media notice. Typically, I don't recommend giving exact numbers in a media, but you can show over 500, over 1,000. You want to use generic terms, and we'll talk more about the media notification. You're going to learn that you want to document a lot of things. So you're going to determine the discovery date. When did you discover it? Who discovered it? How did they discover it? How were you notified? Those are types of things that you're going to want to make notes of and put down days and times. Your leadership alert. How are you going to advise the appropriate internal management, and who needs to know at this point? So we'll have a list in our plan that identifies those folks and when they should be notified. External communications. You're going to need to, you notify the media. You may need to notify TEA. You may want to reach out to your ESC. In the case of agencies, we have to notify legislative leadership. We actually have a list of that here in a moment that we'll show you, but that's not required for schools or local government. But that's why this is a template, and you can modify it to meet your needs. You're going to want to conduct interviews. You're going to identify and interview personnel with relevant knowledge, determine whether or by whom access may have been approved, who discovered the risk. You're going to document, you want to gather and review contracts. In many cases, this involves third party, and it involves provisioning, who is going to be doing what. Those should be outlined in the contract, if at all possible. So you're going to need to review contracts if it's third party involvement. Again, we also talked about cybersecurity insurance and what's required if you have to file a claim by that particular provider. So you'll want to know those things in advance, have those documented as to who you need to contact along those lines. And of course, you have to do mitigation. You have to resolve those issues. You may find that we need to revise certain policies, or maybe it was just procedures that we need to fine tune. Business requirements, there may be involved sanctions for workforce. You may need to look at reinforcing contracts to reduce the likelihood that of a reoccurrence. You want to set a timeline and assign responsibility to ensure accountability on that mitigation. And you want to follow up on the corrective action plans that initiated and completed on time, and discuss the appropriate the acceptance of risk of the non-recurrence, and report that appropriately. So those are things right off the bat that you're going to look at in those initial triage while you have all this other chaos going on. So this helps you. It certainly helps me when I'm trying to remember, what do I need to do? I have it written down. So it's always handy. Now, there are templates, like I said, and this is an example of what this is just a template of the information, the incident response team. You can modify this any way you want to, but those, that'll probably include your cybersecurity coordinator, your chief technology officer. You may want to include, anyone in your organization that you feel relevant. One of the footnotes here that we do have is about legal counsel. You do not want to include a legal person as part of this team because that may forfeit the loss of their attorney-client privilege. So you don't list them as part of the team. They're invited as a guest, but they may be in all the meetings so that they can be your attorney should something come out and need to go to litigation on this. So there are, your network folks can be included on this. I start out with a core team on mine, and then we can add ad hoc members. So, if I have someone that, in this case, it's a third party that I'm working with, and we work with the third party because our data center is indeed operated by a third party. So we include those folks. We have our networking team that includes DIR. They've got an NSOC, so we include those folks, and we can add those to that response team at any time. So that kind of is just, you want to build that list of folks, and you want to make sure you include after hours contact because this doesn't always happen at a convenient time. So those are some of the things that you want to consider about the number of folks and who you want to include it. Like I said, there's even a template out there on minutes, so you can take a summary of it. But basically you want to document as much as possible. Summary of the event, that may be the same in every meeting until you're able to determine that, as well as the participants' updates, previous updates, what's our next steps, when's the next meeting. So it gives you some idea as what you may want to include and document in those meetings. Now, this is the actual list of who I have to escalate this to. Once I've notified our commissioner, we internally, we also have to notify the Senate Oversight Committee chair. We also have to notify the House Oversight Committee chair. Have to notify the Texas State Cybersecurity Coordinator and the Chief Information Security Officer, as well as the Speaker of the House, Lieutenant Governor, and the Office of the Governor. So that's a list of who, as a state agency, I'm required to notify. Once I've notified my internal, those are the ones that I have to notify as well. But we'll talk some more about. We'll take a look at what your communication level might look like. First of all, we'll talk about internally. So you have a cybersecurity coordinator. You may have a chief technology officer. You may want to include a principal. You may need to contact your cybersecurity insurance provider, superintendent, legal staff if you have one. You're going to have to notify at some point in time the school board members, as well as I always recommend you reaching out to your ESCs. Because they, in many cases, may be able to provide some additional resources and help for you, as well as TEA. So you can reach out to us. We created a special notification email at cybersecurity@tea.texas.gov. So if you have an incident, you can't remember my email address, hopefully you can remember cybersecurity at tea.texas.gov. But those are examples of who you might need to be contacting within an escalation on an incident. So let's talk about rule number 2 in incident response. And rule number 2 is know your plan. And that is sometimes difficult to do. You say, well, I don't have time. Well, what we have done, we actually did a cybersecurity tips and tools instant response being prepared. That was session 4. That's available out on Texas Gateway under resource cybersecurity tips and tools. And it goes into depth about being prepared and how you can be prepared for that. So I strongly recommend, if you're looking for more resources on that, you can pull up that presentation, you can pull up the video and go through that, and hopefully that'll provide you with some information. So I want to cover a little bit more about what happens in the first 24 hours and what you need to be doing in case of an incident response. You're going to want to document the date and time that the breach was discovered. That may be different than your current date and time. It just depends. When did we discover this? It may take some time to get it reported to the proper channels. And so you want to make all document all of that. You want to alert and activate everyone on your response team, which may include folks externally if it involves a third party, to begin executing their preparedness plan that we're talking about. Secure the premises around the area. This is something we often don't think about, but when there's a data breach, if we can, we want to try to secure those areas to try to help protect evidence. So if we're going to bring in law enforcement, we may want to secure the area as well. Sometimes data breaches occur, and we think about this just in the computer realm, but it could be that we've had a laptop stolen, or we've had a filing cabinet that's been broken into. Any of those could potentially result in a data breach. So we want to make sure we document, that as much detail as we can. You want to stop additional data loss. Take the affected machines offline, but don't turn them off, or even that matter, start probing around on them until someone that is capable of doing forensics and have them begin to work on that for you. Again, we talk about documentation, but you want to document everything that you know so far. Who discovered it? Who reported it? To whom was it reported? Who else knows about it? What type of breach occurred? What was stolen? How was it stolen? What systems are affected? What devices may be missing? So all of those are things that you want to that's probably going to happen in the first 24 hours. And there's a few more things. You want to interview those that are involved in the discovery of the breach. You want to try to determine how they found out about it. Was it simply someone calling them and alerting them? Or was it, they were doing, some investigation from alerts on a system that led them to, to ultimately find out that we had incurred a breach. You want to review protocols regarding disseminating information about the breach for everyone involved in the early stages. We have to be careful about who knows what we're investigating. So we try to keep that limited as much as you can, with just those that need to know, until you get a full understanding and impact of what we're dealing with. So, establish those protocols. If we need to bring someone in, you can do that. But hey, we're under an investigation. In many cases, our early investigation is also going to lead to investigation from law enforcement. So we want to make sure that we keep that to a minimum as much as possible. You're going to do assess your priorities and risks based on what you know about the breach. Oftentimes we have to bring in an outside third party to do full forensics if we need to, and do a full in-depth investigation. Notify law enforcement if needed after consulting with your legal counsel and upper management. Many cases it's difficult to determine what law enforcement we need to contact. For example, if a filing cabinet was broken into or a laptop was stolen, that would be local law enforcement. If it involves the internet and access through the internet, most of the time we're going to need to involve the FBI. And the reason for that is that their jurisdiction is much wider than local government. So we oftentimes have to reach out to the FBI. So let's talk a little bit about communications, because as you can begin to understand, communications are very important. From the alert notifications that come out to come from a system, who do they go to, as well as do your users know who they need to contact if they find something that looks abnormal or something that's not performing correctly. So you want to make sure that your users know who to contact in case there is an issue. Alert notifications. Your issue investigation. So now we're going to have to bring in more than just your core team. Maybe you have to bring in someone that has more expertise in your network. You want to be able to bring those in, and how do you notify someone? In small organizations, that may be you walk down the hall and tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, can I visit with you in my office, please? In a large organization, you may have to send an email or pick up the phone and call them. So it just depends on your organization as to how you handle that. In your documentation, you're going to you're going to write up what you found. Again, that's an internal communication, but you're going to have to disseminate that to people that need to know what was found. So again, you may want to look at your escalation list, and again, you're going to want to notify those, as well as your remediation communications. What are we doing about this? Can we fix this application? How long will it take for us to get this back online? Those types of things all have to be considered in the communications. And then we have third-party communications. Depending on your contracts, you may be sending emails back and forth to third parties trying to determine exactly what happened. In many cases, you're not going to be able to sit down with them. You may be on a Zoom meeting. You may be on a conference call. You want to be sure that you deal with those communications and understand how to handle them. And of course, you have leadership communications. Again, that's your internal leadership and how you're notifying them and providing them information as things are going along. Now, I've seen a couple of instances where of the appropriate leadership wasn't notified for 24 or 48 hours. And that was probably a mistake on those parts. I like keeping my leadership involved, notified. So I typically keep them updated at least every 4 hours on changes. And then there is the dreaded media communications. And media communications, you want to be concise, exactly what happened, who it impacted, what you're doing. If it is a legal, if it's under investigation, be sure to include that in your media communications. Recently was at a presentation in which a firm had actually a government entity had a large breach. They spent 8 hours writing a one paragraph media communication. And then they showed us the communication that came up with, seemed to be pretty concise and clear, and yet they then showed two different newscasts that covered that from that media communication, and the differences in the way that was covered. So you have to be really careful on your media communications and try to be as clear and concise as possible. The same thing is true if you're dealing with a breach notification. You're sending that out to people that it be impacted. You want to again explain, what happened, what you're doing about it. Are you providing, protection of some type for them? Those are all management decisions, but those are the communications that are typically involved. And once again, we have a whole webinar that was presented on crisis communication during a cybersecurity event, session number 10. So if you're interested in taking a look at more detail about the types of communications and how to better handle those, again, the Red Book has some very good examples in that. But please take a look at crisis communication during cybersecurity incident, session number 10. So let's take a look at rule number 3 for incident response. Practice your plan. Now, we talk about why it's so difficult to find time to do that, and it is. So you have to plan for that. But it makes it so much easier if you've run through your plan a couple of times and done some type of exercise. And what that does is not only helps the you and everyone understand the flow and how things go. It also helps people and we do a exercise. We actually have our PR team write up a mock video response, have our legal team review that. I mean, we want those people to, understand what their responsibilities will be as well. So you want to practice that plan, and you want to include as many people as you can. I'm not opposed to having tabletop exercises that just include IT. That's a great idea, but I also think you want to include everyone that might be involved. You just have to make sure you be very clear in your communication that this is an exercise. So again, we actually do have another cybersecurity tips and tools that goes in more in depth into this area, called Practice, session number 11, under Cybersecurity Tips and Tools out on the Texas Gateway. And there is a couple of sample simple exercises out there that you could run through. We also have a step-by-step playbook that we built for a 2-day exercise. And you go, oh my goodness, 2 days, I can't dedicate 2 days to that with all the teams. You're absolutely right. We divide that across a couple of days so that we inject out of a playbook a task for someone to do, just like we would, if we involved our application team, we needed them to review some logs, we would send a note to them saying, hey, we're looking at an incident. This is an exercise. We need you to look at these logs and see if you can determine this. Who logged in at these times? Okay, so there's a whole playbook, step-by-step of an exercise out there that could be easily modified for you to use with your teams, and that playbook goes all the way down to notifying the commissioner and your escalation of folks that need to be involved in that. So again, we've provided presentation on that as well as a couple of exercises. So I'm going to wrap that up for basic incident response, because I want to do a quick update on House Bill 3834. If you'll recall, House Bill 3834 is the one that requires local governments and state agencies to use security awareness training that's been certified. So DIR has posted the first list of certified programs and who provides them. There are still vendors and other folks that are being assessed at this time. So their plan is to update that site on a weekly basis. I'm not sure if that's going to be on Fridays or Mondays, so you might check that website. But they are going to keep updating that weekly till they work through the backlog. But they wanted to get the list out. So the first list that we have included 19 different programs. They're only required to provide 5, but they've already provided 19 of them. And so here is a list. I'm not going to read down through that list, but if you'll take a look, if you've been using one of these programs and they're on the list, then you can I recommend you go out to their website, take a look at those. But that is a fairly extensive list at this point, but we know that there are others that are coming as well. In addition to vendors and their training programs, they've also published a list of in-house approved training programs. And with that, you will see we do have an independent school district that has received certification on that. We have several of the universities that have received their certifications as well. The in-house is also, if you look at the DIR website, it will tell you whether or not that entity is willing to share what they've developed in-house with other folks. And there are some that are and some that aren't. So we're taking a look. I know we see ESC 16. There's still some question about exactly what was included in that. We're working on those details, but at least we know that we have several choices, including something that was developed in-house, and universities may or may not want to charge anything for that. I have no idea, but we can certainly, if you don't have a contact at those universities, reach out, let me know. I'll reach out to those universities and see if they're, it states whether they're willing to share or not. We'll find out if they want to charge for that or not. We'll find those things out for you. So those are the latest information. Okay. Actually, so now I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions and answers today. I'll verify this list because I'm sure they may have corrected that. Because I know that Region 6 reached out to me and said, I don't think we submitted anything. And so this may still be a copy. I think they may have corrected that. You are correct. It may be Region 6, but I would verify that. I think that the DIR has corrected that. Have a question about whether this will be a copy you can watch again later? Yes, I'll put up the portal here again in just a minute as we work through our question and answers. We'll move back up here to the top. So I had a question here about cyber insurance. Can we provide information on who provides this type of information to school districts? I do know that if you're a member of TASB, they do provide insurance to those members. There are several other companies out there. I really don't have a list of the insurance providers, but I do know that TASB, if you're a member of that, they have insurance. If there's anyone else that knows of another provider, you can post that information and the questions and answers. We'll share that with the team. Yeah, there's a question, about, do we have a rule of thumb as to what level of insurance a district should have per purchase based on their size? That's all of that varies a little bit. Again, I would take a look at the policies and what's required. I know that there's some cyber insurance that will pay for ransomware. Others don't pay for ransomware. They'd rather pay to have the remediation work. So it really varies by the provider on that. I'll take this and see what I can find more information on that to answer that question. And of course, these questions and answers, as well as the presentations, will be posted. It takes me a week or so to post the answers. Want to make sure we validate all the answers, but we'll get them posted out there. I see 2 or 3 comments here that talks about the Red Book online appears to be older version. It looks like I see maybe listed 2 or 3 different versions out there. I'm fairly certain at the bottom of the website there we posted that April 2019. I will double check and make sure that we have, and if we've got more than one posted out there, we'll pull those. I apologize for that. Do we have a list of future vendors that is awaiting certification? I only had one vendor that I know that DIR has said is in the process, and that was InfoSec IQ. But I know that there are others as well. I don't have any other names regarding those at this time. Somebody wants to know what the next step is in that process. The nice thing about the process here is that you can choose a vendor or potentially one of those in-house programs that's been approved, and you can start to distribute that to all of your employees who have access to a local government computer. In most cases, I would say if they have an email address, they're probably going to need to take the security awareness program. There are some that are listed in multiple languages. I did see that on DIR's list, so I know that there was concern about could we have it in different languages, and so yes, there are some that are available that the user can choose that language in their browser. Let's see. Again, I see the correction for 6, not 16. So I'll make sure that we get that corrected, because I knew 16 had called me and said we didn't submit anything. So I didn't think to check with Region 6, but that's glad to know that they've got that corrected. Let me put up the location again where you can find all of our resources. I should have put that link at the end of the presentation. I apologize. There is the URL under Cybersecurity Tips and Tools. Again, it's https://www.texasgateway.org. Under Cybersecurity Tips and Tools, if you go there, you will see featured resources in the middle of the page and Cybersecurity Tips and Tools, and it moves around, depends on what they're featuring, but Cybersecurity Tips and Tools is always one of the featured resources. So that is where you can see this presentation along with all the other resources that we have out there, as well as the other presentations that we've made. And I'm not sure, I think that we've done about 18 of these so far, something like that. So it's always good to know where you can find additional resources. What does TEA use for IT auditing and compliance? Well, we do have a lot of state regulations on auditing and compliance. Unfortunately, we have the state auditors that come in, and then we also have separate auditors that come in, as well as federal auditors that come in. I'll see if I can't find some additional information on that question. If there's a tool or anything out there for IT auditing compliance, we'll take a look at that. So see if we can't get that answered in the when we post those. Okay. Okay. So I see somebody says we had a breach last spring and did not know to report. How do we do that now? You can send it to cybersecurity@tea.texas.gov. You can send it to frosty.walker@tea.texas.gov. Then we'll take a look at that. We try to collect information on like approximately how many man hours did you spend in trying to resolve this issue? Were there any outside costs that you incurred? All we're going to do with that information is we'll be able then to take that information and say in aggregate form, in the last, when they come to session in 2021, be able to say, in the last 18 months, we've had this many incidences, and the average incident has cost this many man hours and this many dollars. Hopefully that will help us obtain additional resources from the legislation. So those are things. But if you'll just reach out, we'll work with you and help you get everything taken care of. Okay. Had a question about, have I heard anything from DIR about reporting process? DIR is working on a solution for the reporting process. They have not released that information yet. They haven't even told me about exactly how they're planning on doing that, but I think they'll be releasing that here fairly shortly. So we'll get a better understanding. But the first thing they wanted to do was let everybody have an opportunity to choose from a variety of vendors and sources for that. So I'll reach out to DIR and see if when they're planning on making that announcement, and see if we can't get that included in our question and answers when we post that. I had a question here about, is TASB cyber insurance enough coverage? And again, I'm really not. I really think you never have enough coverage, but I think you have better. I think they provide a pretty good service. I'll do some additional research and see what we can determine about that. I'll see. I see someone says that they actually reached out to TASB and increased their coverage, and they found that so they could have a better understanding of what their options are, and they found that very useful. So wanted to share that with all the team. The cybersecurity training locations and businesses, most of those vendors that are published are computer-based. Some of the in-house may be computer-based. They may be PowerPoint. I'm not sure, but you should be able to take those at your premises. I certainly would recommend that you had something that someone did not have to leave the premises, but that you could do online. I will reach out. We had somebody says, "Hey, I just completed the purchase of, and they have some more details." So I will, I'll reach out to y'all and see if we can't share some more information on that. Concerning the cybersecurity awareness training, who is required to complete the training? And according to the law, according to the statute, House Bill 3834 states anyone that has access to a local government or a agency computer is required to take the training. I will include, I got a, had some stuff that DIR just sent to me today. And I'm not able to pull that up in front of me right here in front of me. I will include that with the questions and answers as well as for that. So, but they basically say if someone has an ID on a system, or that they would classify that as having access to a local government or a school computer system. So. With that, I think we actually got through most of the questions. No, we didn't. I'm only halfway through them. Sorry about that. Let's see what other questions. There's several things here. We'll include all of this, all this information in the questions and answers. There's lots of thanks everybody. This is what I like. People are sharing information, and that's what that's what we need to be doing. So it does say on the Red Book, at the very bottom of the web page, there is the right version. So I know it's there. I will look through that and make sure that we get any references to old Red Books off of that, just to make sure that there's only one out there. So so we'll get that squared away. Someone asked what's the reasonable expectation for the time. I think those courses vary. They're probably anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes. It could be as long as an hour. I know the ones that we use is certified. They list all the modules that are required, and we have those modules and several others, and ours is just less than an hour to take online. So I would not think that in most cases minimum requirements may be as little as 30 minutes, but you can take a look at they may even list how long that is at the DRI site. I don't recall. I see a couple of vendors that people are asking about. I will reach out and see if we get any updates on those. Is there a deadline for compliance to the bill? There is a deadline for reporting. There is no stipulation as any consequences for not doing this. I personally think that security awareness is extremely key value to protecting our resources. Our end users are the first links that have opportunity to click on things that can identify unusual behavior. So I like to have those folks informed as much as possible. The cost that we pay is probably somewhere in the range of around $3 an individual, which at $3 per year, I look at that and go, oh, if that training saves me one incident, then I think it covers that in one incident. So I'll see if I can find out. We'll provide some more information on that. We're about to run out of time here. Actually, I see I'm a minute over or so I appreciate everybody staying with us. I will indeed go through all of this list that we have. We'll get these questions and answers out to you. And we'll get these posted, and the questions and answers will take a few days. We'll try to get the presentation and the video posted out maybe by the end of the week. That'll be my objective. So if anybody has anything else, let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you all for attending. Have a great day. Appreciate it. Thank you.